Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
I had to like say yes to something before I could unmute myself and turn my video on. And I
Oh,
kept
no
trying
worries.
to unmute and turn the video on. I'm like pushing it and pushing it. And then I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. No worries at all. So people kind of trickle in. We usually don't get started until like 5 or so after.
Okay.
And then usually we'll go through and everybody does introductions. They say, where they're coming from, like what clinic they work at, where they're coming from. I'll introduce you guys and then I'll give you screen sharing capabilities right now. Okay, you have screen sharing abilities now. So then you guys will have I'll just turn it over to you and you can do your thing.
Okay.
It'll be about 30 minutes and then around 15 minutes for people to kind of have questions and discussions. Yeah, and so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to have you guys today. I'm curious, like what kind of questions people will have. I don't know how often this kind of thing comes up. I know that it comes up fairly often in the work that we do. I don't know how often clinicians actually work to address it because it's not something that they have a ton of training in how to address necessarily, right? And a lot of times, like clients don't ask, like, how do I, like, they maybe don't disclose that they're wanting to start dating or that they're having trouble
Right.
figuring out how to date or what that looks like with a severe mental illness. Like, how do I navigate that? So anyway, I'm going to let some more people in. I'm going to mute myself and yeah, we'll get started around 5 after or so.
Leah, do you want to share your screen or should I share my screen?
I think.
Yeah, I can give you, you both have screen sharing abilities.
Because I've got it pulled up and everything. I was just curious if you have a preference, like when you're presenting, if you like to have your
that's
screen
fine.
up or...
Yeah, that's great if you do it.
Okay.
Also, yes, will you use your breathing ball when the time comes, Anna?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you just want to lead it and I'll do the physical thing.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Morning.
Good morning, Piper.
Good morning.
I'm just letting people kind of make their way in, Piper.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see them on your screen or not, but Anna and Leah are the two that are presenting today. So I'm introducing you guys virtually.
Nice to meet you. Thank
Consider
you.
yourselves introduced.
Thank you for presenting today.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Happy to be here.
I'm excited about this topic.
I think it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah. I don't know where everybody is, but the snow is so pretty. It's just like sticking to everything, and it's just nice. I don't have to leave, so
That's why it's nice, Melissa, because you don't
that's
have
why
to-
it's nice. But it's pretty.
It
Does
is really
anybody
pretty.
watch those Lofi videos on YouTube to like decompress? They're just like these simple animations, and they have kind of mellow music, you know, kind of like trip hop jazz or something like that, that you can put on while you're doing homework or something like that. And a lot of the Lofi animations are like gently falling snow. So it's supposed to be a very serene and peaceful scene. And it looks like a Lofi YouTube video outside. Just to underline what Melissa was saying.
Very nice.
I was
It's
tired.
Lofi if you ever want to look it up, Lofi.
Okay, now I'm gonna have to look it up.
It's called Lofi. I've been calling it Lo-Fi the whole time.
I would also say lo-fi.
What?
Yeah, I've been saying
My
I
whole
would say
life I have
lo-fi.
mispronounced words based on reading them and not talking to very many human people.
Like loafing myself.
I was like, that sounds like Lo-Fi girl. I used to use that when I studied. That's so funny.
That's hilarious.
I still put it on when I'm just like cleaning the living room, or you know, it's still very soothing to me, oddly.
Well, there was some uproar because YouTube
Yes.
stopped their stream. They're like one of the longest streaming videos in all of YouTube, and they like stopped them for like an ad or something, and people got really mad. But
Interesting.
YouTube drama.
Mm-hmm. Krista, do we have, I forgot who's doing case presentation today.
Max is,
Oh, perfect. And he is.
they're here.
They're
Yep.
here.
So I think we can probably get going. And I'll just let people in as they show up if more people come in. So yeah, so hi everyone, thanks for being here today. We have a somewhat different presentation today in that the focus is on sexuality and dating and navigating relationships and boundaries and things like consent, as opposed to talking about like, you know, managing symptoms of psychosis. So I'm really excited about it because I think it's a topic that comes up a lot and we don't always have the tools or don't always know, you know, some ways that we can have those conversations. And so the folks that are with us today are from a place called Mad Hatter Wellness, which develops curriculum for people with all abilities, but the focus is on folks with physical and developmental disabilities. And I have worked with them before, and I asked them if they felt that the curriculum would translate. And it does, because it's the curriculum for everybody, right? Like this is all stuff that we need to know. This is all conversations we need to know how to have. And these are tools that I think are useful for everyone. So I'm super excited to have them here today. I want to do introductions like we normally do, and then I will turn the floor over to them. So I'll go first. I'm Marissa Coudray. I work with Piper. I have for like 5 years now. And I also do some clinical work at the St. Louis Park Clinic. Piper, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm
Okay.
Piper Meyer Kalos, and I am a clinical psychologist and an individual therapist or IRT clinician for the Navigate team, and also one of the developers of the Echo Clinic and EpiNet project. And I will turn it over to Melissa Rosewell.
Morning, I'm Melissa Rosewall. I'm a social work care coordinator and clinician on the Navigate team in St. Louis Park, and I'll pass it to Orly.
Good morning, I'm Orly Haven. I am family clinician in the Navigate program out in St. Louis Park / my attic office, enjoying the winter scene out the window, and I will pass it to Amy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm an IRT clinician at the St. Louis Park location, doing my doctorate practicum experience under Piper. I will pass it over to Melissa Dalho.
Hello, I'm Melissa Dalho. I'm a clinical social worker by background and program director of our Navigate program to treat first episode psychosis at the U in St. Louis Park. I'm super excited for this topic. I'm already perusing your website. So anyways, really jazzed. I'm going to pass it to Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny. So I'm a supported education and employment specialist at the HOPE program. And I'll pass it to Elizabeth.
Hello, I am Elizabeth Habish. I am an IRT at the HOPE program in Minneapolis. I will pass it to Jessica.
Hey, I'm Jessica or Jess. I am a graduate student in the Department of Psychology at the U, and I just started working with Piper, so she kindly invited me to join these meetings. So I'm happy to be here, and I will pass to Max.
Good morning, my name is Max Hunter. I'm a clinical social worker. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the family clinician over at the Strengths program at the Riverside location. And I will hand it off to Nasteha.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nasteha. I am a graduate student at Augsburg studying clinical social work. And I'm also part of the Strengths program, and I do IRT for individuals, and I also co-lead group therapy. I am not sure who else has not. Oh, I'll pass it to Jules.
I'm Jules Lindholm, and I'm the program director and clinician of the Strengths program. And I also came on a little bit late, so I'm not sure who went.
No worries. Go ahead, Trisha.
Hi, I'm Trisha. I am an IRT clinician in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I will pass it to Anna. Have you gone yet?
Anne? I don't know if there's another Anna. I don't know. Oh no, Anna. Sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
I'll have Anna and Leah go at the end because they're presenting. So Anne, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Anne Williams-Wengard, and I am a family clinician, and we'll be starting individual IRT in January at the St. Louis Park program. So I will pass it to Balan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Balan. I am a MSW student, advanced standing at the University of Minnesota.
And I think we've got Bridget left.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bridget. I'm a clinical social worker, and I do diagnostic assessments and a little bit of group work for the first episode psychosis program in St. Louis Park.
Melissa Rosewell, did you go? Did you introduce? You did. Okay. Awesome. Anna and Leah, if you would like to introduce yourselves, and then I'll just turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, I can go first. I'm Leah, and I work for Mad Hatter Wellness, and yeah, we're super excited to be here today.
And I'm Anna, and I work for Mad Hatter Wellness as well. And we both do education, writing, a little bit of everything. But we're educators, I think, primarily, and happy to be here in that capacity.
We're really happy to have you.
All
So
right.
yeah, so if you guys want to take over the screen, by all means,
cool,
do so.
One moment here.
Just a quick FYI, our kids' school did cancel today. So be a small person running around. That's
no worries.
Yeah.
Nope. There we go. Whew. Zoom.
Thanks, Anna. All right, so we start all of our classes and trainings and kind of everything we do with a little bit of centering, because we know that people learn better when they're calm, and also that sometimes this topic can be hard for people to talk about. So if we can start from a place of calm, that's a much easier for learning and for digesting this information. I don't have my breathing ball, but we're going to just take a few deep breaths. Anna has hers. So we'll just take 3 deep breaths together as a group. If you want, you can kind of get comfortable, put your feet flat on the floor if that feels good to you. If you want to close your eyes, you can, or if you want to watch the breathing ball that Anna has, that is totally fine too. So let's just take 3 deep breaths together. So first deep breath in and out. Second deep breath in and out. And third, big deep breath in and out. Thanks, Anna. I'm going to give a little bit of background information kind of about who we are and what we do, and then I'll turn it over to Anna in a little bit to kind of give some more sample activities and talk about specific things about our curriculum. So who we are, we're Mad Hatter Wellness. We are founded by Katie Thune, who is an educator in St. Paul. And kind of noticed that a lot of the young people that she was working with were not getting the support that they needed when it comes to learning about healthy relationships, consent, boundaries. And so since then, we've created 3 main programs for schools, for group homes, for job sites, for Special Olympics. Lots of different organizations and schools use our programming, but we have Sexuality for All Abilities, which is the main one we're going to talk about today. And then we also have Open Conversations, which is kind of a beginners to Sexuality for All Abilities. So for younger kiddos, learning kind of about their bodies and about healthy family relationships and friendships. And then The Power of Me is another curriculum that we teach that is for kind of those tween years where during puberty, kind of learning about how to handle conflict and emotions and self-esteem. So lots of different topics are covered in these 3 curriculums. But yeah, today we'll talk mostly about Sexuality for All Abilities. And we just like to share this infographic anytime we are teaching or talking about this, because I think a lot of times when people hear the word sexuality, they're like, oh, we're just going to talk about sex, which, that I think that's a fun topic. Maybe not everyone does, but that there are a ton of other pieces that go into sexuality education. So there's, obviously there is reproduction and genitals and that kind of piece of it, but then there's also so much about gender role, identity, all kinds of relationships, love, how you feel about yourself with body image, and then sexual orientation, who you are attracted to. So it's really a big piece of who we are as people. Yeah, so right, why do we teach sexuality education for people with disabilities? Yeah, we believe that people with disabilities have the right to access equitable sexuality education. And this is just a big part of, knowing our bodies and also our well-being as humans. So just a little bit of background. We won't go too much into this because I know Anna's got a lot to share with sample activities and stuff, but that we know that people with disabilities are sexually assaulted at a much higher rate than their non-disabled peers, and that people with developmental disabilities often experience repeated sexual assault, whether that's from a caregiver or someone, a friend of the family. Most of the time it's somebody that they know. And just that in general, across the board, people with intellectual disabilities are sexually assaulted at a rate 7 times higher than those without disabilities. So while we really want to encourage sexuality education as like a proactive approach and kind of a joyful approach that like, yeah, we want to talk about this. This is fun. This is a beautiful part of your life. We also know that there's some like pretty disturbing trends that also need to be addressed so people can be safe and healthy. So there's lots of reasons why people with disabilities are more vulnerable to assault. We know these are some of the main ones, kind of those societal ideas and beliefs around people with disabilities, like, oh, they don't have sex, they don't want to have relationships, that's not appropriate for them. You know, we're just not going to talk about it because it doesn't affect their lives, but we know that that's not true at all. The aspect of the disability might come into play. We know that, you know, some people have problems with or struggle with mobility or with communication or with I'm going to forget the word, impulse control. So some of those decision-making skills aren't as developed as we would want them to be. And then just that lack of sexual education, that a lot of times people don't know what to expect or, you know, what's going on with their bodies. And so that can be an unsafe situation. We also know that people with disabilities oftentimes kind of have some learned compliance, or like, oh, you just kind of have to follow the rules, or someone's going to help you, and you know they know what's best, or they know what's best for your body better than you do. And that can lead to uncomfortable situations or sexual assault if people aren't being safe. And then isolation, even today, like it's, you know, you can't leave your house a lot of times if you have a disability, and living in Minnesota in the wintertime makes that really hard. So you might not be able to get out and talk to people or share your experiences or check in with a doctor or a therapist. And so isolation can be a big piece of that as well. So comprehensive sexuality education to us, this is kind of our belief around it, is that sexuality is not just about sex, it's also about life, relationships, and then those relationships to others, ourselves, and with our bodies. And we just believe that comprehensive sex education instruction method based on curriculum that aims to empower students with knowledge, attitudes, skills, values, to make appropriate, safe, and healthy choices in their sexual lives. Comprehensive sexuality education includes learning about and practicing self-determination and self-advocacy. We've just found that being able to make your own decisions about, you know, your body and about your sexuality, that's gonna, you know, transfer to other parts of your life that you can feel like you can advocate more for as well. All right, so here, so this is just kind of a little bit of background about what's in our Sexuality for All Abilities lessons and materials. So obviously there's the lessons and activities that are all on a flash drive. There's worksheets, social stories, activities, other materials, as well as videos that we've created that are safety videos that kind of talk about some of those harder topics like sexual assault that we obviously don't want to like role play that, but we do want to talk about it and have some sort of discussion around it. So those are safety videos are about that. Also breathing ball. We have boundary flip books, which I think Anna will talk a little bit more about. And then some red-green cards for people who maybe need some extra support communicating, like green, yep, that feels healthy to me. Red, that feels unhealthy to me. So some extra tools for communication in there. And then these are all the topics that are covered in our Sexuality for All Abilities curriculum. I won't read all of them, but you can take a look at those. Yeah. And then our open conversations curriculum, like I mentioned, is kind of for those younger kiddos, the preschool, the third graders, and that includes a lot of the activities. We have kind of coloring activities, social stories, things that are a little more appropriate for those preschool through third graders. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Anna.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, so as we were kind of putting together these slides and thinking about talking with you all today, I would imagine that you have sort of a wide range of ages and different things going on with the people you work with. And, we know there's a lot of intersections of identity. And so hopefully I'm just going to share a variety of things, and hopefully some of the things will be helpful to you. And also, feel free. I can't see the chat, but I'm thinking probably Leah can. So as we go, if you have questions, like feel free to raise your hand, unmute, throw something in the chat. I know we only have 30 minutes, so this is just sort of a quick thing. But definitely like stop me if you have questions or whatever. Like we want this to be as useful for you all as possible. So a lot of what we do just kind of centers around like establishing conversations about relationships and what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And so this is just a simple way that we help people start to think through the different people in their lives and kind of what category they might fall under. We talk to people about the romantic partner needs to be someone who is consenting to being in a romantic relationship with you. It's not a crush. Crushes are fun, or can be, depending on how you feel about them. But a romantic partner is somebody who's consented to be in a relationship with you, and that's a conversation to have. And then like the differentiation between like a professional relationship and a friendship can be really helpful for some people to think through, because after we categorize these different people, then we think through the kinds of touch we might use with those people and kind of our boundaries with those people. And so this is a way to just kind of organize, like at the center is myself. That is my closest relationship, my relationship with myself. And then like, who are some of the people that I might hug? And some people that we work with aren't going to put anybody in their hug circle because they don't like hugs, and that's okay. Like it's an opportunity for people to think through their boundaries. We encourage people to use a pencil because our boundaries change from day to day, from place to place. But just really thinking through like, who are the people in our lives that we have closer relationships with, and that physical touch might be closer? Who are people that we should not be touching, or they don't like touch, so we'll put them in the do not touch area of our relationship circle. So just a tool to think through the people in our lives and the touch that we might use with those people. And then getting into more about boundaries, we do use our flip books that Leah mentioned before. And it's a lot of times the first flap says it is okay, it is not okay. A lot of times I just get rid of that. But for example, the first one just says, my caregiver hugs me at home. And this might be a way for people to think through that caregiver relationship and whether or not that would feel okay for them to have a hug at home. But then we think about like, my romantic partner hugs me at home versus my romantic partner hugs me at work, for example. And just like people thinking about different places and boundaries that they might have with different people in their lives. And that's where we also sometimes use a red and green card for people who don't verbally communicate as much. Just green could mean like a stoplight, go, healthy, I like that. Red would mean, unhealthy or stop. I'm not into that. We use thumbs up, thumbs down, and then, depending on how verbal the person is that you're working with, you can just have a conversation about that and about the boundaries that people have with different people in their lives, depending on where they are and what the relationship is. A little bit more about boundaries, just really clearly defining what a boundary is and then helping people think through their own boundaries. I know it's been many times we've worked with people who've been like, oh, I don't really know what my boundaries are. And it's like just providing people the space to think through, like, what feels healthy for me emotionally with this relationship? What feels unhealthy? What are my physical boundaries? Like, really taking the time to think that through can be super helpful. And then just like communicating with some kind of like role play or writing it down. The flip book is a great way. We also I don't know what your settings look like and if you use any role play with people, but we never role play unhealthy boundaries. That just feels like opening yourself up to unhealthy, unsafe situations. So we can talk about what's unhealthy, but role playing things that would feel healthy, like practicing communicating boundaries. Like right now with the holidays coming up, it's a time when people maybe need to communicate certain boundaries about the holidays. So just giving people an opportunity to think through what their boundaries are, practice communicating that. And then of course, not only do we have to think of our own boundaries, but also what are the boundaries of the people in our lives, and how do we handle that rejection? If, for example, we really want to be in a romantic relationship with someone and they aren't interested in us, or we want to give someone a hug and they say no, practicing like understanding that rejection is a part of life, and that, we have to honor other people's boundaries. Before I talk about this, are there any questions or anything real quick that anybody has a concern about? All right. This is a tool that we use just to kind of help people think about what a healthy relationship might look like. And you could add to this, you could, for each person, what's healthy might look a little bit different. But, we found that sometimes if we never really talk about what are the components of a healthy relationship, and people don't necessarily have a model for that in their lives, then how are we supposed to find that relationship, right? If we've never thought it through. So these are pieces that we talk about that can contribute to a healthy relationship. We talk about how if a piece is missing, we might want to talk to that person. We might want to work on that area. If all of the pieces are missing in the relationship, if none of these things are true, it might be time to kind of reevaluate or think through whether or not that relationship should be continued, or if you need help getting out of an unhealthy relationship. And then with that as well, just taking time for people to kind of talk through, list for them what would be healthy in a relationship, what would be unhealthy. And it could be things that they can do that are healthy versus unhealthy, and then also things that the other person can do that are healthy or unhealthy. Leah, is there anything in the chat that I should know about or address? No? Okay, thanks.
Piper's a fan of what you're talking about.
Oh, awesome. I like hearing that. That's great. That's great feedback when I'm in my little Zoom bubble here. So moving into consent, this is a model that we just find to be really helpful and clear. The 3 steps of: you ask someone, you listen to what they have to say, and you respect their answer. And this video here, I can always send the link, but this is a video of 2 young people just modeling consent, not only in physical relationships and sexual relationships, but throughout the time that they hang out together. They're constantly checking in and, do you want to play a video game? Sure. Do you want to go to the movies? Not really. And in the end, it's really cute because one of them says, do you want to kiss? And they're like, yeah. And then it pans out behind a tree and you can't actually see them kissing. But we've had students be like, oh, they're kissing. But just a very simple model. But I'm sure we can think of situations where maybe someone asks for consent, but they're like, hey, can I hug you, as they're hugging you, right? And they're not taking the next step of listening to what the person wants, and then also respecting what their answer is. This is a social story that we use to talk about consent, and it just talks about the different steps: asking the person, listening, they might say yes or no. People give consent in different ways, addressing body language, if you're asking if you can hug somebody and they're like yes, but they're crumpled in the corner, showing you physically they're not really that into it, that you have to read those cues and think about people's body language when it comes.
Anna, there's a question in the chat.
Thank you.
Wondering if there is a discussion about ability to consent possibly ebbing and flowing depending on symptom presentation. So for us, the folks that we work with, sometimes their capacity to consent might change at any given point. So wondering, how you might weave that into a part of the conversation about consent.
Yeah, that's a great
and
question.
also particularly with mania. So when there's really low impulse control, perhaps as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a question that has come up in various settings for us with various abilities and disabilities and diagnoses. That's a really good question. I mean, in this moment, I'm just thinking about like having that conversation with the person and naming it and saying, you know, like at this point, you know, your capacity to consent may not be there. Like you're in a state that might not allow you to actually consent. And sometimes we get into tricky areas of like legality and consent with people's capacity. Leah, I don't know, do you have any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that like we don't have any materials that like directly, you know, have a question about this, but we do kind of in our discussion questions have, you know, things about sort of like, yeah, like who can give consent, what might be factors that affect your ability to give consent. You know, it could be like, you know, drugs and alcohol, but also can be, could be something like experiencing mania or psychosis. And so definitely it's a topic that like can be addressed with some of the work that we do and some of the activities that we have. Yeah, I think like Anna said, it's going to be a more direct approach of the specific person and depending on kind of what their symptoms are and how it's presenting in that moment. So
and I could see it being really helpful to have it as a conversation, just like in group work or in like when someone's not experiencing mania, to have those conversations like as a baseline, or these educational pieces as a baseline, so that it's not like a reactive thing, but more of like something we've talked about before. Yeah,
I was gonna I can speak to this on more of a personal level than our professional level, but I had a family member who struggled a lot with psychosis and mania, and we created he liked to call it this, but his madness plan, or mania plan. And so that was something that we talked about ahead of time to kind of, and like wrote it out and had a copy of it of like, okay, if I'm experiencing these symptoms, here's what we need to do. Or if I'm experiencing this situation, here's how I need support. And part of that was around kind of that like those, sorry. I have long COVID and my brain sort of shorts out a lot of the time. I can't think of the right words.
around physical touch and stuff like
Thank you,
that.
Anna.
We're on the same wavelength. Okay, yeah, thank you, Leah. I'm going to keep going because I know we do have time for questions at the end as well, and just like to try to get through like a little bit more, just sorting through different consent possibilities. Like a person assumes without asking that they can touch you because they have touched you in the past, right? That is real life. And is that healthy or unhealthy? Having the conversation, like wanting to change the kind of touch that you are doing. Like if you've been holding hands but you want to kiss, like is that healthy or unhealthy to ask for consent in those times? So just thinking through some different consent boundaries. You all mentioned dating, thinking through steps to dating for people could be really helpful. Like just like laying it out, like you meet someone, you notice that you're attracted to them, you tell them that you like them, you might spend some time together and ask them to go out on a date. But that, you know, being honest, checking in about boundaries, understanding that we all have different perspectives, and then be aware that rejection is really common. We spend quite a lot of time talking about rejection because it's part of life. And the more skills we have with navigating rejection, the healthier our relationships, I think, can be. Because there's go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I've been working a lot with someone who I do one-on-one classes with someone who experiences mania and psychosis, and he talks a lot about like, well, when do I tell someone that I have experienced these things? And so we kind of talk a lot about like, yeah, and I think that's true for like a lot of people with a lot of different things. Like when do you tell them that, you know, if you have a kid or if you have you know, a health issue, like how do you sort of have those disclosures? you know, like we talk a lot about like when you're online dating, some people just like put everything out there right away, like, you know, only apply if you know all these things about me first. And other people, you know, you might want to, you know, meet them and, you know, chat with them for a while, meet them in person, and then tell them once you've met them in person. And so there isn't like a hard, fast rule that like works for everyone, but just being able to have that conversation that like, yeah, that is something that you need to talk to the person that you're going to go on dates with, like what feels comfortable to you, what's going to be safe for them, and kind of making a plan with the person to kind of how they're going to share that and when.
Yep. Thank you, Leah. We like to use videos a lot. These are just some examples. We have our safety videos. We have a YouTube channel that has short videos, mostly short videos. Amaze.org can be a really helpful resource. The videos are geared more towards like, I'd say like high school and younger, but we've used it with adults, just prefacing it with the fact that like, yeah, this was made for high school students, but there's some really good information in here. And yeah, you can decide whether or not that would be appropriate for the people you're working with. And then NCIL, the National Council on Independent Living, has great sex ed videos on YouTube. They are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities teaching sex ed topics. May or may not be appropriate for people you're working with, but they're really, really great videos. And my favorite is the condom demo video that they have. It is amazing. Highly recommended. Communication boards. I'm not sure about communication levels of various people that you work with, but these are the communication boards that we have around healthy relationships. There's a core communication board with just like core vocabulary that people would need to maybe get their points across. And then the more specialized boards that talk about healthy relationships and then sexuality and communication around sex. This is just like a quick example of a sort. We do a lot of sorting that could be helpful. This is from our kids' curriculum, so I don't know if you work with younger ones, but just kind of sorting through like, this is healthy, this is unhealthy. And then we also have some social stories that involve like coloring for people to think through things like gender. This is our family discussion guide. If you're working with families and you feel like it might be something helpful for people to have a resource, it's like a pamphlet. I know we have like a few left on our website, and we're working towards reviewing and redoing this at some point, but this is a resource that could be potentially helpful. How can we support you? We do trainings like this. We have parent and caregiver workshops. We're available for consulting. We have our boss, Katie, wrote a book, Sexuality for All Abilities. It is geared towards like special education classroom teachers mostly. But in case that's of interest, we offer, and this says monthly, that's not accurate anymore, but we do offer educator calls, which are free over Zoom that you could sign up for on our website and just like pop in. They're typically with Leah, and you just be like brainstorming like, hey, I have this situation, I'm not quite sure what to do. And you could talk to Leah and whatever other educators show up to just like chat. You all may not identify as educators, but you would be welcome on this call. And we also offer, and they're not monthly, but they are with a certain amount of frequency, the parent and caregiver calls that are free. So it's like, you can talk to the parents and caregivers can talk to our parent and caregiver educator about what's going on with them. Sign up for our newsletter on our website. We don't send a ton of emails out, but we do send something out like once or twice a month. Just a nice way to stay connected and be like, oh, hey, yeah, I remember those people that came to our presentation. You can contact us with questions, give us a call. We're on social media if that's something you're into. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we can kind of think about moving into Q&A type stuff.
Thank you guys so much I wish that we had like many more hours for you to talk to us. That was really, really awesome. So
yeah. Thanks for having us.
Anybody have any questions?
I'm curious, since you talked about rejection, this is something that comes up pretty often. We have a lot of younger folks who really make a good effort to go out and meet people, and they take our advice and they go on dating apps and they, but I think the rejection part is really tough. So do you have just like a couple like nuggets that seem to really work in session with folks related to rejection and kind of moving on, and that's kind of part of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say my first thought is just like validating people and saying like, yes, rejection is hard. It is. And that upfront education before, beforehand of like rejection is a part of life. It does happen. I know we've also, I think, Leah, we have a blog post about rejection, right? And I remember, or I don't know. There's so much like writing that we do with curriculum and with blogs and with different things.
Yeah, I'll
But
find
just-
it and put it in the chat box.
Thank you, Leah. But I know part of that is like kind of having a plan for rejection. Like, how are you going to take care of yourself? Like, what do you do after something like that happens? Like, who are some people you can talk to? What are some activities that make you feel safe and comfy and good? Like, just practicing some love for yourself. What could you do to kind of like take care of yourself after you've experienced rejection? Yeah, because it's hard. It really is.
Yeah, I love those things.
Good. Yeah, okay. I see Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yeah, my question is actually kind of similar to that, but in regards to ghosting in dating. I've been working with, a woman in her early 20s who's dating, and she's had a couple of instances where people she was into did not seem as interested in her, and just kind of like, from my perspective, seemed like they were stringing her along. And she was like, what do I do? So what I had done is just really look at like what she feels is healthy, but are there any tools that you all have used in conversations or building skills in addressing ghosting, or like when somebody is dating but not really committed and that's what you're wanting?
Yeah, I think that's gonna, like, there's a lot to that, right? Like, but I think that one of the things that I use with some of the people I work with when it comes to rejection and ghosting and sort of like weird dating norms that I feel like are unhealthy for everyone, regardless of what intersections of identity you have. But kind of going through those the healthy relationships, kind of talking through like what are pieces of a healthy relationship. And then talking about the communication piece being a really big piece of a healthy relationship. And so if there's no communication, like that relationship is just over, like that's something you need, helping them move on from that. If you can write about it, if you can sing about it, if you can scream about it, whatever it is that you can kind of help your body get rid of some of those feelings and not holding on to it, but then really focusing on the like, okay, so that situation was hard, you experienced rejection or ghosting, like what are some things that we need to pay attention to the next time, or what are some healthy green flags that you can look for in your next dating adventure.
And I would say too, like within like what we talk about with a healthy relationship, we talk about compromise and that there's a give and take. And if you're the one who's always communicating, and they're not putting as much effort in, like that might be a conversation that you have with them. That might be something that leads you to say, you know what, I'm not going to continue this relationship. And then also like thinking about how people communicate and what they're not saying also tells us something sometimes. If they're not communicating with us, like what is that telling us? Something that could be helpful to think through.
I also think too, like helping young people or anyone, I don't know why I said young people, helping people kind of think through, I know this is kind of a nuanced topic, but like some dating websites are for like hooking up, like I feel like that's just the thing. And so, and then some are more for like, you know, people who are actually looking for relationships. So if you can kind of help them figure out like what they're looking for, and then what the appropriate avenue is for finding that kind of relationship, I think that can be a helpful for anyone, for your friends too.
Yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, that segues well into the question I have. First, thank you so much for being here. This is such a helpful topic to talk about, and I have really so many questions, but I'm just going to stick to one, which is, I appreciate the mention of like talking about dating. And then Leah, you mentioned, you know, helping people find maybe the right pathway to meeting people. For some of us on this call, I assume, like myself, I've been out of the dating game for a number of years, and I'm like, what pathways are there? What pathway do I want to guide somebody down? And I'm just curious if you have any guidance for us in terms of, yeah, how you would educate professionals about kind of the avenues to guide people down.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that online dating is kind of just like a necessary, I don't want to say evil, that sounds too harsh, but it just is.
That's how people are meeting right now.
Yeah. But I also would like encourage people to do activities in real life, and like Meetup has like a lot of great if that's appropriate to them and that's accessible to them, you know, like trying out a community ed class or something, with the understanding that you might not find anyone there to date, but it might be a good place to just meet people and practice social skills that maybe some of us are all kind of like struggling getting back on board with at this point. Leo, when you said like what apps might be better that aren't just like for hookups, I'm like, do tell, Leah. What? Because I'm not sure I know.
I just feel like there's like a different vibe on each app, you know, like I feel like Tinder is like people just want to hook up, and then I feel like there's the ones you pay for, like Match, or, you know, ones that you like are actually like, I feel like if you're, you know, then that might be a little bit more like actually looking for relationships, but I don't know. I do
there definitely is like a hierarchy of dating apps.
Yeah, right. I wanted to say too, I think I agree with what Anna said. One of the ideas I often talk with the people I'm working with about is sort of what are things that you're interested in, and then go do those things, and that might be where you could meet. You know, like I have a young man I work with, and he really likes going to the gym, and I'm like, well, why don't you sign up for some more like group classes, so then there's going to be other people that also like going to the gym. Or I have someone I'm working with that like really is like really working on like personal growth, like really wants to and so they've started going to like a class that's all about like yoga and dance and kind of incorporating healthy practices, and they're like, oh, well, then I can find other people that are also incorporating healthy practices into their lives. And so I think that can be a good way to build lots of relationships, also just to build friendships. We know that people with disabilities and, you know, people with mental health can struggle with friendships in their lives too. So if they can find places where they have common interests or common values, I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah. I also just had an idea, if anyone feels comfortable like naming specific sites and what you think they are helpful for in the chat, I'd say go for it. And like I, you know, everyone's what am I trying to say? Like everyone's experience with different sites is going to be different. Obviously, we're all different. We're all going to put different things on our profiles. We're all, you know, I would say that like from what my understanding is, like OkCupid can be a broad like site that is like open and like good for tailoring lots of different like relationship styles and choices and who you are. So that one I feel like could be potentially a helpful one to check out for people. But again, I feel like I hesitate to endorse any dating site because it's like, yeah.
But I think also like you can, you know, like younger people oftentimes are on Bumble and Hinge. And so kind of figuring out what age range the people there is a lot to think. Yeah, there's a lot there.
And I think too, if I could comment, just it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about too is like we're not just sending people to apps and that's it, right? You're supporting people and talking about what a healthy relationship consists of. So prefacing kind of having them work with an app, for example, kind of helping them tease out what would be healthy versus unhealthy, I think would be, yeah.
There is, I did just want to mention really, I know there's some other questions too. Special Bridge is a dating site for people with disabilities. There's a few of them, and that's the only one I've heard like I think like ethically it's pretty good. Like I think there's kind of that worry that if it's all people with disabilities, are there going to be other people who are going to take advantage of people like that? I think there's like a very thorough vetting process to be on that website. But
I think it's for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So depending on who you're working with, it may or may not be.
Right.
Elizabeth or Piper, did you have something you wanted to ask or?
I one of the things that comes up often is we have individuals who are late teens and early 20s a lot of times. And it's often this interesting intersection where people are really experimenting and trying new things, but also figuring out their identity. Do you find that in group scenarios versus individual scenarios, is there any rule of thumb that you tend to follow when you're putting these kinds of groups together? Some of the literature that I've read has talked about the importance of really thinking intentionally about the different people attending the group and the ability for people to feel comfortable sharing in groups when it's a mixed group versus a group of the same gender or not, or some sort of mixed choices about things. I think it's again, we are dealing with people who are at different kinds of intersections and maybe still figuring this out. Is there any suggestions that you have about thinking that through or approaching that, or the difference between, suggesting some individual work versus group?
Yeah, I mean, we typically don't have any sort of luxury is the first word that comes to mind in terms of putting together groups. So it's like, here's your group. So I don't have a ton of experience in like selectively putting together a group or saying like, here's a group for this. I would say, I do think there are times when we do recommend individual situations over group situations, and that might be simply because the person just really needs that attention, that one-on-one attention. They might have a lot of things going on that they need that support, and also they may be somebody who's kind of taken over a group or talked a lot or not, just like really just like drawn a lot of attention from like so that other people don't get a chance. And so that might be a time when individual situations are better. We've ran all sorts of different kinds of groups, and I think there can be positives and negatives to any group setup. Typically though, our groups are all genders, and I also am thinking about like if you were to start a group and notice some dynamics that you feel like could be helpful, like you could, if it's an all gender within a certain age range type group or something, you might notice like, ooh, it'd be really nice to have like a little breakout group. And if you have the luxury of having a couple people running the group, you could separate out into smaller groups as you get to know the group. I don't know, Leah, do you have any other thoughts about that question?
Yeah, I just as in my experience with the I do a lot of our one-on-one education, and a lot of time that's for people who've who have experienced more like inappropriate to maybe illegal behaviors. So kind of I think there's sort of the like, as a group you can really talk to anyone about healthy relationships, boundaries, consent, things like that. And then sometimes there are people that need some more supports when it comes to like, understanding like like what's going to get you arrested? What is, how do you, and then if you already are in the system for something like that, like how do you, oh my God, sorry, y'all. What kind of education do you need moving forward? And so that's a lot of the work that I do with our one-on-one groups. And so it's a little bit more like, okay, this specific situation has happened, or this person has a history of this, or especially with those young people where they're like getting real close to 18 or just over 18, really helping them navigate like, okay, like now you're like, this is illegal. This is gonna, and kind of doing a lot of education about very kind of more specific behaviors that people are having. Did that make sense? I'm really
Yes,
sorry.
yes, it did. You're good. You're good. All good. No, this is it's a tough topic. I mean, I think we're just kind of trying to feel our way and figure out, how do we respect everyone's choices and meet them where they're at and support them wherever they're at. So I appreciate that. And I hate to cut us off, but I because this has been such a wonderful discussion. We so appreciate you coming today. This has been fabulous and it has sparked all kinds of ideas in my brain about things. I hope others have had a similar experience in thinking about some of this. And so we are going to move to our case presentation because I want to get sure that Max has their time. And you are both are welcome to stay. We encourage you, and if it would be of interest, but we also know you have a busy schedules like all of us.